Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are here for the very first time, I want to say a warm and genuine welcome, and I truly believe that by the time you reach the end of this video, you are going to see ParkJimin in a way that you have never quite seen him before, not through the lens of a fan, not through the context of charts or streams or sold-out concerts or any of the commercial measurements we typically use to talk about an artist's impact, but through the eyes of a professional visual artist who has spent years studying, drawing, painting, and sculpting a single face, and who has articulated what he found there in terms that are so precise and so extraordinary that they have stayed with me since I first read them. And if you have been part of this community for a while, you already know that on this channel we go beyond the obvious conversations. We find the stories that reveal something true and deep and lasting about who Jimin is, not just what he does. And today's story does exactly that. So please hit that like button, make sure you are subscribed so you never miss anything we post here, and let us get into every single layer of this remarkable story right now. The story begins with an artist named Lee.K. For those of you who are not already familiar with his work, let me give you a proper introduction, because understanding who Lee.K is and what kind of artistic reputation he carries makes everything else in this story significantly more powerful. Lee.K is a South Korean artist whose work spans an extraordinary range of mediums and disciplines. He works with graphite, charcoal, pens, markers, oil pastels, and oil paint. He draws, paints, tattoos, and sculpts. His signature style involves building layers in his portraits by adding intricate contour lines over a charcoal base, a technique that enhances facial features in a way that makes his work simultaneously realistic and deeply expressionistic, capturing not just what a face looks like but what it feels like to look at it. Lee.K is particularly known for his grayscale portraits, which have garnered widespread acclaim and earned him a significant following in both the fine art world and on social media, where his Instagram handle @Leekalist has become a destination for people who appreciate portraiture that goes beyond technical accuracy into genuine emotional and philosophical depth. He is not a fan artist. He is not someone who draws idols as a hobby or as an expression of personal enthusiasm. He is a serious, professional, critically recognized visual artist whose work has been exhibited in some of the most prestigious art venues in the world. And since at least 2019, the primary subject of his most significant and most ambitious work has been ParkJimin of BTS. Let us talk about that timeline, because the depth and the longevity of Lee.K's artistic engagement with Jimin as a subject is itself one of the most remarkable aspects of this story. The artist's solo exhibition titled Absence of Language, held at the Gangnam Art Museum in 2019, marked an early public expression of his connection to Jimin as a creative muse. This was before the global K-pop conversation had reached the level of mainstream cultural saturation it would achieve in subsequent years. This was before Jimin's solo work, before Face and Muse and all of the individual commercial achievements that have since defined his solo career. At a time when the world was still in the process of fully reckoning with BTS as a cultural phenomenon, Lee.K was already in his studio, spending hours with Jimin's face on his canvas, exploring what it revealed to him as an artist. That is not the behavior of someone who made a strategic decision to align themselves with a popular figure. That is the behavior of someone who found something genuinely compelling in a subject and followed that compulsion wherever it led, regardless of whether or not anyone else was looking. And in the years since 2019, that compulsion has led Lee.K to some of the most extraordinary venues in the art world. The Focus Art Fair, held at the Carrousel du Louvre in Paris, the prestigious underground gallery that sits adjacent to the actual Louvre Museum, one of the most visited cultural institutions in the history of human civilization, has featured Lee.K's Jimin-inspired work on multiple occasions. Think about what that means geographically and culturally for a moment. The Carrousel du Louvre attracts close to 8 million visitors annually from around the globe. It is a space that exists at the absolute pinnacle of the international art world, a space where the works displayed sit in the cultural shadow of the Mona Lisa and the Venus de Milo and every other masterpiece contained in the museum above it. And in that space, Lee.K brought his portraits of Jimin. Fans mentioned that his artwork had the same impact as classic paintings like the Mona Lisa or Girl with a Pearl Earring, and seeing the hype surrounding it, it could not be denied, especially since the Mona Lisa was also seen trending on social media as fans made these comparisons. That is not hyperbole generated by enthusiastic fans in isolation. That is a response to something real, something in the quality and the power of the work itself that made people reach for the highest comparisons available to them when trying to describe what they were experiencing in front of those canvases. The Carousel du Louvre exhibition was not a one-time anomaly. This is the third time that a Jimin artwork has been showcased at the Focus Art Fair, which is a global art fair held in different cities each year to promote artists in an individualized fashion, with past locations including London, Paris, and Porto. Lee.K has also exhibited Jimin-inspired work at the Focus Art Fair in New York in 2025 at booth P13 in Manhattan, bringing his portraits of Jimin to the American art world in a way that introduced them to an entirely new audience. He has shown work at Artfesta in Seoul. He has exhibited at Star Nada in Seoul, which was set up specifically for exhibiting what the organizers described as the signature works by artists, the pieces that define who they are and what they stand for creatively. And for Lee.K, that signature work is his portraits of Jimin. Not portraits of multiple subjects. Not a diverse portfolio of celebrity faces. One subject, explored with increasing depth and complexity over the course of years, through multiple mediums, in multiple formats, on stages of increasing international significance. That is a life's work. That is an artist saying, I have found the subject that contains everything I need to say, and I am going to spend as long as it takes to say it. Now let us get to the part of the story that I think deserves the most careful and detailed attention, what Lee.K actually said about why Jimin is his muse, because his explanation is not a vague expression of admiration. It is a precise, technically informed, aesthetically sophisticated articulation of something specific and extraordinary that he identified in Jimin's face, and it reveals as much about the depth of Lee.K's artistic perception as it does about the genuinely unusual qualities Jimin possesses as a visual subject. In an interview with Kosus magazine, conducted under the Ministry of Culture, Sports, and Tourism of South Korea, which is itself a significant context, because this is not a fan publication or an entertainment outlet but a government-affiliated cultural institution, Lee.K opened up about his profound connection to Jimin and the inspiration behind his artwork. He said the following, and I want to read this slowly and carefully because every word of it matters. After listening to BTS music for the first time, I felt that Jimin had a special charm to himself. His face has a unique characteristic in which the Eastern and Western charm and male and female beauty coexist. Every angle of his face has a different personality, and it gives off a different allure depending on the lighting and expression. Let us unpack that statement with the seriousness it deserves. Lee.K identifies two coexistences in Jimin's face that he considers unique. The first is the coexistence of Eastern and Western charm. This is a specific aesthetic observation that goes beyond general attractiveness and addresses something about the structural and expressive qualities of Jimin's features that allow them to resonate across cultural boundaries of beauty in a way that is genuinely unusual. Aesthetic beauty standards in East Asia and in Western cultures have historically emphasized different qualities, different proportions, different relationships between facial features, different ideals of expression and presence. For a face to carry both simultaneously is rare. It is not simply a matter of being conventionally attractive by any one cultural standard. It is a matter of possessing a set of qualities that speak to multiple aesthetic traditions at once, that look at home in the context of both Korean visual culture and Western visual culture without belonging exclusively to either. For an artist who studies faces professionally and who has looked at thousands of them through the practiced eye of someone trained in portraiture across multiple traditions, identifying this quality in Jimin's face is not a casual observation. It is a precise aesthetic diagnosis delivered by someone qualified to make it. The second coexistence Lee.K identifies is equally profound and perhaps even more unusual. The coexistence of male and female beauty in a single face is something that has historically been considered one of the highest ideals of aesthetic perfection in multiple artistic traditions. In classical European art, the concept of androgynous beauty that transcends the binary division between masculine and feminine was associated with divine or idealized forms. In East Asian artistic traditions, including Korean classical art, the ideal of beauty often incorporated qualities that Western traditions might categorize as belonging to different genders. And in contemporary fashion and visual culture, the concept of gender-fluid aesthetics has become one of the most discussed and celebrated dimensions of modern beauty discourse. When Lee.K says that Jimin's face combines male and female beauty, he is placing Jimin within this long and distinguished aesthetic tradition, saying, essentially, that Jimin's face achieves something that artists and philosophers have idealized across centuries and cultures, which is a beauty that does not belong to a single gender but partakes of both and therefore transcends both. That is an extraordinary thing to say about another person's face, and it is made all the more extraordinary by the fact that the person saying it is a professional visual artist who has spent years making it his life's work to study and represent that face. Lee.K went even further in other statements, saying that Jimin is the best from every angle and has an attractive face for men, and that BTSJimin is also blessed with great charm because he has multiple personalities expressed through his face. Multiple personalities expressed through his face. This is perhaps the most technically interesting aspect of what Lee.K describes, and it connects directly to something that anyone who has studied photographs of Jimin or watched videos of him performing will recognize immediately: the way that Jimin's face seems to be genuinely different depending on the angle, the lighting, the expression, the context. This is not a universally common quality. Most faces, even beautiful faces, have a relatively consistent character across different conditions of light and angle. They look like themselves. Jimin's face, according to Lee.K's professional artistic assessment, does something more complex. It presents different personalities, different allures, different emotional registers depending on the conditions in which you are viewing it. For a portraitist, this is both a profound creative challenge and an endlessly compelling subject, because every time you approach the face from a new angle or a new light, you encounter something you have not fully seen before. It is a face that rewards sustained, deep, repeated looking. And that is precisely why Lee.K has been looking at it, drawing it, painting it, and sculpting it since 2019 and shows no signs of stopping. The practical impact of Lee.K's work on the art world's reception of Jimin-inspired art has been remarkable and worth examining in some detail. At the Carousel du Louvre exhibition, Lee.K's art attracted many armies to visit the fair, which recorded over 10,000 footfalls over the period of 4 days. The artist himself said, "I heard from the officials that many people were waiting at the entrance to see the work modeled after Jimin of BTS. I was nervous and moved by the interest of people." 10,000 visitors to an art fair in 4 days, with people waiting at the entrance specifically to see the Jimin portraits. That is not a niche fan gathering. That is a mainstream cultural event. The Carousel du Louvre is not a K-pop venue. It is a serious international art fair that attracts collectors, critics, curators, and cultural professionals from around the world alongside general members of the public who come to experience significant contemporary art. And all of those people, the collectors and the critics and the curators and the general public, stood in front of Lee.K's portraits of Jimin and had responses powerful enough to generate the kind of attendance figures that made art fair officials take notice. The comparison to the Mona Lisa that circulated on social media during the Louvre exhibition is worth dwelling on, not because it is literally accurate. The Mona Lisa is a specific work in a specific historical context that cannot be replicated, but because of what it reveals about the emotional and aesthetic experience of viewers encountering these portraits. When people reach for the highest comparison they can think of to describe their reaction to a work of art, they are trying to communicate the magnitude of what they felt. They are saying, "This moved me the way that only the most significant art has ever moved me." They are saying that something in these portraits of Jimin touched the part of them that responds to genuine beauty, genuine depth, genuine artistic achievement. And the fact that non-fans, people who came to the Focus Art Fair without any particular knowledge of or investment in BTS, had similar reactions, is what makes the comparison most significant. Because it means that the response to these works is not contingent on loving Jimin or knowing who he is. It is a response to something in the work itself, something Lee.K found and captured there that speaks across the divide between fans and non-fans, between K-pop audiences and fine art audiences, between people who have heard 700 times and people who have never heard a BTS song in their lives. The most recent chapter of this ongoing artistic story involves Lee.K's exhibition at the Focus Art Fair New York 2025, where his portrait of Jimin was displayed at booth P13 in Manhattan. The response from fans and from the general New York art world audience was consistent with everything that had come before it. Fans came from across the country to see the work in person. Fans wrote on social media about the experience of seeing the portrait displayed in a New York gallery context, about how it felt to see Jimin represented not as a pop cultural figure on a concert screen or a magazine cover but as a fine art subject, treated with the same seriousness and the same level of craft that has historically been reserved for subjects of the highest cultural significance. RM of BTS, who is himself a passionate and knowledgeable art lover, has acknowledged in a livestream that whenever he visits exhibitions, he sees artworks inspired by Jimin, a quiet acknowledgement from within the group that Jimin's status as an artistic muse is not a fringe phenomenon but a genuine and widely recognized aspect of his cultural identity. And one netizen perhaps said it most succinctly and most perfectly when they wrote simply, "Renaissance painters and Greek sculptors would have loved him." That comment, "Renaissance painters and Greek sculptors would have loved him," is worth sitting with for a moment, because it contains within it the entire argument for why what Lee.K does and what he says about Jimin matters so much beyond the world of K-pop fandom. The Renaissance in ancient Greece produced some of the most enduring visual art in human history, and much of that art was organized around the search for an ideal of human beauty that could transcend the individual subject and speak to something universal. David. The Venus de Milo. The Faces of the Sistine Chapel Ceiling. These works endure not simply because the artists who made them were technically skilled, but because the subjects they chose and the qualities they found in those subjects touched something in human perception that remains consistent across time and culture. When a netizen says that Renaissance painters would have loved Jimin, they are saying that the qualities Lee.K has articulated, the Eastern and Western coexistence, the male and female coexistence, the multiple personalities expressed through a single face, are qualities that belong to a tradition of visual idealism that stretches back to the origins of Western art. They are saying that Jimin's face is not just attractive by contemporary K-pop standards. It is beautiful in a way that would have been immediately recognizable and immediately compelling to the greatest visual artists in history. And Lee.K, through years of patient, serious, deeply committed artistic engagement with that face, has made that argument not in words but in the language of paint and charcoal and graphite and oil. He has made it at the Carrousel du Louvre and in Manhattan and in Seoul and in London and in every other space where his work has been shown. He has made it to art world professionals and to curious general visitors and to fans who traveled across the world to stand in front of his canvases. And the response, consistently and across every context, has been the same. This is something extraordinary. This face contains something that rewards sustained, serious, artistic attention. This person is, in the fullest and most historically resonant sense of the word, a muse. For ARMY, the story of Lee.K and Jimin is profoundly meaningful for reasons that go beyond the specific aesthetic qualities being discussed. It is meaningful because it represents a kind of recognition that exists entirely outside of the commercial and promotional machinery of the music industry. Lee.K did not choose Jimin because of chart positions or streaming numbers or brand deals. He chose Jimin because in 2019, he heard BTS music, looked at Jimin's face, and found there something that his trained artistic eye recognized as genuinely and historically significant. He made that choice when the rest of the mainstream art world was not paying attention to K-pop and when the idea of a serious fine art exhibition centered on a Korean idol would have seemed unusual to many people. He made it because he saw something real, and he trusted what he saw, and he built years of meaningful and internationally recognized work on the foundation of that trust. That is the highest form of artistic tribute. And it is offered not by someone who loves Jimin the way fans love Jimin, but by someone who looks at faces the way artists look at faces, with training, with discernment, with the accumulated visual intelligence of a professional life spent studying human beauty in all of its forms, and who, after all of that looking, chose this face above all others as the one most worthy of a lifetime of artistic attention. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way through. If this gave you a new way of seeing Jimin or a new appreciation for the depth and breadth of the cultural impact he has had beyond the world of music and entertainment, please show some love with a thumbs up. It helps this channel enormously and it tells me that this kind of thoughtful, in-depth content is what you want more of. If you have not subscribed yet, please do it now because we are going to keep bringing you stories like this one that go deeper than the surface of what everyone already knows. Drop a comment below and tell me your reaction. Did you know about Lee.K's work before today? Have you ever seen his portraits in person? And do you think there is any other artist in any medium whose sustained engagement with Jimin as a subject tells us something equally powerful about what makes him so uniquely compelling? I read every single comment. Take care of yourselves. I will see you in the next one.